From Sydney, Australia, this is Chronic, a podcast about IBD. Well, kind of. Brought to you by Gali Health and written and spoken by me, Luke Escombe. Some listeners may be too young to remember this, but back in the early days of the internet, when you had to listen to this sound every time you logged on. Come on. Oh, come on. Oh, God. Back then, cures for Crohn's were everywhere. You have to understand what a new and frankly not very exciting technology the internet was in those days. It was basically just a really frustrating and inefficient way to look at pornography or annoy the drummer from Metallica. But what it did offer was something different. It was an alternative to the conventional wisdom of the doctors who told you that IBD was a complex disease with no cure. You could type Crohn's cure into a search engine like Excite, Yahoo or Alta Vista. This was before the existence of the word Googling. And pages of evidence would appear on your screen that your doctor was basically lying to you. There were cures for Crohn's, tons of them. That bastard. These cures would usually have something to do with enemas, lemon juice, colloidal silver, brown rice or aloe vera, which maybe didn't sound too impressive on their own, but the kicker was they'd be accompanied by testimonials from real people just like you who had taken these fantastic cures and fantastically cured themselves, for real. I mean, holy shit, how was this not common knowledge? You'd read a line like, "I used to go to the toilet 20 times a day, doubled over in pain," and think, "Fuck, that's me. My doctors told me there was no cure," and you'd think, "Damn, my doctor told me that shit as well. But then I took this thing that you can take too for just $60 a month, and now, bum, I'm cured, motherfucker." And to prove that this was a real person, there'd be a Christian name and the name of a suburb. I mean, why would anyone make that kind of shit up? And in addition to letting you know that, in fact, there were numerous cures for your incurable illness available for recurring monthly payments, the internet also introduced me, and thousands of others like me, to the fact that it wasn't just my doctor who was lying about the existence of these cures. It was all doctors. And the reason they were covering all these cures up was because they had all been bought, corrupted by an all-powerful, octopus-like cabal of evil, horn-rimmed, spectacle-wearing, ex-concentration camp-running, sick-ass Nazi bastards known collectively as Big Pharma. As I said back in episode 1, it's very interesting looking at people's behaviour during this pandemic through the lens of my 2 decades of chronic illness. It's like looking back in time at my younger self. I know exactly how appealing conspiracy theories are when the world is falling apart around you and the science is not telling you what you want to hear. When it's hamstrung by reality, by facts, in a way that many political leaders and media personalities these days clearly aren't. Reality is like Play-Doh to a lot of these people. They can shape it however they want. But wait now, I'm starting to sound like a conspiracy theorist again. Wake up, Sheeple. Follow the breadcrumbs. Follow the breadcrumbs. Can we time out? 1 second. Follow the breadcrumbs is from the story of Hansel and Gretel, right? Hansel's evil stepfather is trying to abandon Hansel and his sister in the woods, but Hansel's clever and he leaves a trail of breadcrumbs behind him so he can find his way back home. Which it turns out he can't, right? Because the breadcrumbs get eaten by the birds. So in fact, there are no breadcrumbs. There are no breadcrumbs. Instead, Hansel and his sister find a gingerbread house in the middle of the woods and nearly get eaten by a witch. Or rather, they don't, because the whole thing is a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale. It's like the phrases, "through the looking glass," or "we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto." They all relate to a world that does not actually exist. But as I said, I'm in no position to judge or begrudge anyone their comforting fictions. In my 2 decades of living with Crohn's, I'm not ashamed to put my hand up and say that I've tried just about everything at least once. I've seen naturopaths, homeopaths, sociopaths and psychopaths and given money to all of them. I've tried acai berries Aloe vera, colloidal silver, spirulina, no wheat, no sugar, no dairy, no yeast, no fiber, no fucking food at all. I've sat and meditated in sunbeams until I achieved enlightenment, fully expecting that this would bring about the cure those corrupt doctors and evil drug companies were withholding from me, and still my shitty colon would not wake up, Sheeple, and follow those damn breadcrumbs. I tried acupuncture. So many people told me how relaxed I'd feel afterwards, and they were right. I did feel more relaxed afterwards. It's not a hard concept to grasp, really. My body was tense from wondering how I could possibly be enduring 25 simultaneous stab wounds without asking it to fight back or run away. Why are we just lying down and taking this, Luke? Are you on drugs? Why are we listening to New Age music? What are you doing handing over that money? Are we being robbed? What's happened to our pants? I tried medical marijuana. I mean, before it was medical or legal. I got my prescription from a guy called Dr. Dre. He said, smoke weed every day. And I thought, all right, I'll try that for 10 years or so, see how it works out. I knew he wasn't a real doctor, but I was open-minded. I found that smoking weed would take away my stomach pain better than conventional painkillers, but it had all these weird side effects on my mood and my memory. Like I'd suddenly feel really happy for no reason and forget that I was sick. I'd also get terrible anxiety, like I'd worry that we were going to run out of weed. I tried an elimination diet. I was seeing a naturopath in Byron Bay whose surname was Hendricks. That should have been a clue. He said I should only eat foods that my Neanderthal ancestors would have eaten. I thought, okay, sure, makes sense. That's a really good diet if you want to lose weight, because most of the food has been extinct for thousands of years. It's already been eliminated by evolution. What else did I try? I tried Chinese herbs. Just sort of like regular herbs, but, Chinese. I took probiotics, which are like the opposite of antibiotics, I guess. They've sort of been reversed or something by magnets. One time I met a man on the street who told me he was wearing a special medallion that protected him from negative frequencies, including whatever number G the internet was up to back in 2006. 3G, 2G, Kenny G. What the fuck is G anyway? And I offered to buy this medallion from him for $50, which was a lot of money at the time for a struggling musician, but hey, I was open-minded. I saw another guy up in a little Australian country town called Murwillumbah. Actually, I never saw him. We just spoke on the phone. He told me that all the autoimmune diseases we have today are a result of toxic chemicals released by the CIA in the 1970s, which were still in the atmosphere. Sounded plausible to me. Sure, why not? Wake up, Sheeple. Then he told me that all he needed to treat me was a lock of my hair and a photo of my belly button. And I thought, okay, bit weird, bit, polyjuice potion, but whatever. And $500 in cash. That was the other thing he needed from me. He would then tune into my digestive system using some kind of homemade electromagnetic wand of some description, which he would use to beam healing frequencies to my home in Sydney, over 600 miles away. And then when the magic wand, for whatever reason, wasn't quite working, he began sending me pills he'd compounded himself on his kitchen counter in unmarked containers, which I would pay for at $500 a pop, and swallow into my actual digestive system with no clue as to what they were. They could have been anything, literally anything. Now look, I'm not an idiot. I knew instantly that this guy was an absolute crackpot. But I gave him several $1,000s over the course of the next year, just to be sure. And I did all of this while still taking the prescription drugs that my gastro was giving me. Oh yes, I was hedging my bets. Of course, I didn't tell my gastro about the guy in Murwillumbah with the magic wand and the polyjuice potion. That was my little secret. After all, I couldn't trust her with that kind of information. She was working for them, for Big Pharma. Sorry, for Big Pharma. Look, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that some level of permanent suspicion, if not outright hostility towards Big Pharma, isn't justified. We're talking about huge global companies that make shit tons of money selling drugs to sick, often desperate people. Some of those drugs have deadly side effects. Some of them are dangerously, even fatally addictive. And that shit ton of money they make doesn't just make them rich, it makes them powerful. It gives them influence over elected officials and legislation. Although, let's face it, that's true of anyone with a shit ton of money in today's political system. But still, it's easy to cast them as the bad guys. And if that's the case, then by the laws of flawed logic, the people on the other side of that divide, the ones telling you not to take your meds, the ones who reject research and evidence-based medicine in favour of something more traditional, natural, herbal, the ones telling you that there is a way to cure your illness through diet or positive thinking, the people, in other words, who are willing to tell you what you want to hear when the science and your own doctors aren't, then those must be the good guys. That's exactly the flawed logic that I was operating under for most of my 20s. Where it becomes harder to maintain the rage against Big Pharma is when you actually meet people who work for pharma companies and realize that many of them are actually quite nice, compassionate human beings who began their careers as doctors or nurses or researchers, or who crossed over from some other corporate job because they wanted to be part of something that actually helped people. In fact, several of the people I know at pharma companies are fellow cronies. The very first Ostomate I ever met worked for Big Pharma. Yes, of course, they make money, but they also use that money to make medicines. They still haven't come up with a cure for IBD, that's true, but the medicines we have now are, let's face it, the best we've ever had, and they keep getting better. They've transformed a lot of people's lives. People like me, people like you. They've given people hope, just like the COVID vaccine is giving people hope today. And it's not just hope. It's not just good vibes and positive energy. There's data and evidence to back it up. That's what makes it medicine as opposed to alternative medicine. Its effectiveness has been exhaustively proven over years of randomized clinical trials. Unlike those other health products we buy that say, may help with whatever your thing is, on the side of the packaging. May help. May. It may. As in, no one can prove categorically that it won't help. It may. It may. That'll be $26, please. As Tim Minchin said, you know what they call alternative medicine that's been proven to work? They call it medicine. Speaking of data, or data, tomato, this is a paragraph I found on ourworldindata.org about the smallpox vaccine. Oh yes, I'm going there. It reads, "It is impossible to know exactly how many people would have died of smallpox since 1980 if scientists had not developed the vaccine. But reasonable estimates are in the range of around 5 million lives per year, which implies that between 1980 and 2018, around 150 to 200 million lives have been saved." End quote. And you know what's so cool about the smallpox vaccine? I mean, apart from saving 200 million lives over the course of my lifetime, what's so cool about it is that in its original form, it was folk medicine. It was something farm workers did. It was a natural remedy that was then improved on and made deliverable on a mass scale by science. Now, who knows? Maybe if social media had been around back in the early 80s, we would have had some alternatives to that vaccine. We could have offered people in smallpox-ravaged areas of Africa CBD oil instead, or got them to go gluten-free. We could have educated them as to how smallpox was a result of childhood trauma or repressed emotions, and got them to assert their right to treat their body as a temple and refuse the vaccine. I just don't feel the smallpox vaccine is right for me. My body, my choice. Maybe bleach can knock it out. Maybe if we get sunlight inside the body somehow, that will kill the smallpox. Wake up, sheeple. Follow the breadcrumbs. Do your own research. Educate yourself. That's the world we live in now. When I was a kid in the 80s, there was this book series called Choose Your Own Adventure, where you could decide how you wanted the story to go. Now we live in a world where you can choose your own reality. But in the real world, which I hope still exists somewhere, science and nature are partners. They always have been. Science is the study of nature in order to understand the world and make life better for human beings. It exists in partnership with philosophy and art and education to minimize pain and suffering and promote joy and fulfillment. I don't love the fact that we need to rely on Big Pharma for our medicines, and that shareholder profit has become such a big consideration in how science moves forward. But I also know that a system is only as good or as bad as the people who are involved in it, and there are some very good people working in that system. I know because I've met many of them. What I can't abide is people who are profiting from pseudoscience and anti-science and prolonging the suffering of people with IBD or any illness by exploiting their anxiety and their doubt and their pain and their desire to feel better. People who tell you you're wrong for listening to your doctors and you should stop taking your meds. One final thought. Maybe part of the reason the pharmaceutical industry arouses such suspicion in us is just that word itself, pharmaceutical. It's not a good word, is it? It has all kinds of bad associations. It makes you think of dirty syringes on the beach, toxic waste drums buried under school playgrounds, and Stranger Things-style secret labs filled with abducted bald kids with wires coming out of their heads. But really, when it comes down to it, what are pharmaceuticals? Where does this word come from and what does it mean? Well, I'll tell you. Pharmacy is an old French word that means medicine. Well, specifically it means a food or substance taken as a laxative, but it's still a type of medicine. And anyway, the word goes even further back to the medieval Latin word pharmacia, which means, yes, medicine, which in turn derives from the original Greek word pharmakeia, which means, you guessed it, yes, drugs, witchcraft, sorcery, poison, and medicine. Thanks to Michael McGlynn for his production of this episode, and once again to Gali Health for letting me share my rambling confessions and rants on your platform. I would like to stress that I have no medical expertise whatsoever, and you should not treat anything I say as advice or even information of any kind. I don't say that to put myself down, I say it to encourage more people to offer that disclaimer before they hit the post button on social media. Thanks for listening. My name's Luke Escombe, and my condition is chronic.